good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, wherever in the world you're logging in from. I have a very special guest today. You know, planters, I think from what I hear, they're not bred, they're born. You have to be born into this to be as crazy as a typical Ceylon tea planter. Now I'm talking to you about the great and iconic planters, and there is none greater and more iconic than my good friend here, Mr. Ken Murray. Ken, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Dilhan. Much appreciated. Love it. I come from a planting family. My grandparents planted out here, my parents planted out here, and I took to planting. I loved the beautiful life, the lush green vegetation that I am used to seeing around plantations. And that's how I started.
What is it about planting? What is it about tea that consumes people with a passion? Now, you, like my father, I know, are consumed by tea. What is it about tea? Is it the goodness? Is it the taste? Is it the variety? Is it the lifestyle? What is it?
There are so many things that make you very passionate about tea. One is that you see this, it's like a little child. You're putting this little plant into your nursery. You take it out, you're planting it, you watch it grow, you nurture it, you keep it. Then it provides you the very best beverage you can have. And don't you think that is fantastic? To see it just grow up, nurture it, look at it, and then let it fulfill your desires by drinking it.
I agree with you 100%, but occasionally I like to hear it said. So now, you told me you're a quintessential upcountry planter.
That's right.
So I want to start this series with a beautiful tea from Lover's Leap. I'll bring it across here. So you've probably been to Lover's Leap many times.
I was in that area. I was the director of that region for about 3 years.
Now here you have a tea which light, it's bright. And you know, when we talk about a journey in Ceylon tea, this is why we refer to it as a journey. Because in tea, what you see on the eye connects with what you experience on the nose, whether it is when you absorb the aroma, or whether you taste and you have the aromas going through into your olfactory bulb. Each, as you see from these images, you have a little bit more structure, a little bit more intensity. You're coming down to Somerset. Now you're in the Dimbula Valley. You're getting more as you go a little bit further south. Coming towards Ratnapur, you're getting more intensity. You're getting stronger, you're getting maltier, you're getting earthier, and finally you're ending with that incredible, intense strength of a good low country tea. Now, as we taste this, I want to ask you also, Ken, weather and tea. It's an obvious question, but tell me, how did you gauge the weather? How did you gauge what kind of tea you would produce today by simply the look and feel of what's happening in the weather?
Well, weather plays a very, very important part in the growing of tea. I mean, I would say the most important part. But to make a good tea, you don't look at weather alone. You should look at the raw material. You know, if your raw material is not what is required, then whether you have the best weather or the worst weather, it's not going to make that difference that you want.
Good leaf.
Good leaf.
And
Absolutely.
tell me about the art of the tea grower, the tea planter.
Well,
what is it?
When I say good leaf, what I mean is, when we started 60 years ago, it was inculcated into us how to pluck correctly and how to send the leaf with the least possible damage. At the end of the day, the good leaf was checked at your refuse tea percentage. In our time, I'm saying our time, long, long years ago, it was about 3%. Dilhan, what is it today? You're looking at 20%.
Yeah.
So your raw material doesn't lend itself to make a good tea.
So that's a key.
That's the key.
Ultimately, it's so. I mean, all of this is what you're saying is it's all formed by weather, what we know as terroir, and what the wine industry knows as terroir,
Yes.
sunshine. And
Yes.
tell me, take an extreme situation, say rainfall, say in the middle of a monsoon. Have you ever managed to make a good tea in the middle of a monsoon?
Yes, you can. You can. We have today machinery that can remove the excess moisture under good conditions and the correct conditions. You have machinery to then churn it out and produce a good tea. Weather has a bearing on quality. Weather has a bearing on quality. But I say that, okay, if you have the correct weather, you'll make fantastic tea. Like the over season, during the over season, the weather is conducive to make a very good tea. And you're producing a brilliant tea, the likes of which I have not seen in the last 30 years of my life. So weather is very important, Weather is important. It can make, it will help towards making a better tea.
What about the Dimbula season? Now, would you have been on any estates where the Dimbula season would have come into play?
Yes, I was on Diagama West. Beautiful. I had lovely times there. Learned a lot of work there. Learned how to make tea with one of my bosses. The Dimbula had a lovely tea. It was like it was a drinkable tea. You could drink it in the morning just plain, or you could drink it after meals, thicker tea. It was lovely tea. It had the color and strength of the low country tea, and it had the astringency of the upcountry or the Norelians.
I love Dimbulas because to me, they are the perfect breakfast tea. And rumor has it that it is there that the original Scottish planters invented the concept unknowingly of the perfect breakfast tea. Of course, eventually that became English breakfast tea, and today it is tea from wherever, whatever, which is unfortunate. But coming back to Sri Lanka, tell me, low country, mid and up country. So you have the different elevations, you have a spectrum of taste and flavor and so on. What do you personally like? Are there different teas for different occasions, or do you like a particular tea all the time?
My favorite is the Dimbula tea. Low country tea has a lot of strength and color. The uvas, it depends on the time of the year, and that tea is so astringent, it's very difficult to drink. It's good for, what shall I say, blending and things like that. But the Dimbula, in my opinion, having been in this industry and having been in Agrapatna for 10 years, is the best tea that I can recommend to anyone to buy.
So Ken, up in the upcountry,
Mind you, it's also one's palate.
of course, one's preference, I guess. Yes. So being in the upcountry, you get a large tracts of lands that are also in kind of nature corridors, for want of a better word, sort of still forested, some pristine, some not. Do you find that where you have the forests, where you have the sambar, where you have nature more, I guess, amidst the tea plantations, maybe no more elephants, but where you have nature coexisting with tea, do you find that there is some, whether it is sensory for the tea planter or whether it is for the tea, do you find some benefit?
Oh, nature is so beneficial to the tea industry. You have, I mean, you have foliage around you. You have animals around you. You have bees, they're pollinating. All that comes. You have winds that go through that foliage that take a certain, what shall I say? What's the word? A certain
Well, it's a wind.
taste,
winds that
yeah.
creates the
And
seasonal
you see,
effect.
And also, we are then with nature. We are one with nature.
Absolutely.
You're looking at your tea bush on one side, and you're looking at nature on the other side, and the two shall blend and will blend. Unfortunately, you don't see that now.
Yes, yes.
I cannot think of one estate today that has the original forest cover or the jungle cover, all the animals and the fauna and flora that was there 30, 40 years ago.
Unfortunately, yeah, that's sad, but I must say we have some good news from Dunkeld because the leopard population has gone up to, I think, 9.
Excellent.
We have the camera traps, and I was thrilled to see the cubs and so on. So, slowly. But I think that awareness of the importance of nature, exactly what you said, not a lot of planters around the world have that knowledge, but what you just said is so very true and so important for the
I will
sustainability.
tell you a little story on this. I was going out with my director, and when we were young, birds and all were pointed out to us. And I happened at that time to be the director of a few estates, and I was with the superintendent, and we were going around, and he said, "Stop, stop, stop. What's that bird?" So then the director said, "That is a blue three-toed kingfisher. It's very rare, but you have to understand it and all that." And he explained about the bird. And so we went around, and then we went back. He said, "Ken, let's go back to see where that bird was." We went back then. Over a pond, there was this kingfisher looking, probably catch his breakfast. So he asked the guy, "What's the bird?" "Sir, it's a bird." So he said, "Ken, let's go." Now, that was the interest. It's unfortunate that today's training is not also gone into the nature side of life. It's book, and like there's saying in the old planter, from the old planter, the best fertilizer is shoe leather.
Yeah.
You walk around your estate, you see what is there, and that is why shoe leather. The same with this bird.
Absolutely. I think in many cases, something that my father taught us is no matter what you innovate, you stay true to certain principles where tradition is concerned. I mean, handpicking is one aspect, and I hope one day that we'll have a technology that replicates picking of tea, of course, presuming that we strengthen our soils and address the sustainability enough to have really good leaf, but respecting tradition is something that we can never forget as we look at innovating. If you look even at tea gastronomy, mixology, big words for making tea relevant to our lifestyles with tea with food and beverage. It's all about respecting the ingredients, respecting the tradition, respecting the taste. But now, talking about taste, let me come back to my question. You talked of Dimbulas.
Yeah.
Do you occasionally, in the evening, do you lean towards the Norelia, or do you have something stronger in the evening?
No, I have a friend who makes me a blend, and I have that early morning and then after dinner.
Excellent.
It's a blend of a BOP, a Dutch one, and a BOP Phoenix.
So you like something, a little bit of intensity.
I like something a little bit of oomph.
I like the opposite. In fact, I like this particularly Lover's Leap. So now, light, bright. I love high-grown teas, but I also love mid and low-grown teas. And I think this is the point. We wanted to have this conversation because understanding the synergy between the weather, of course, the leaf, the terrain, the topology, and the tea, you can see how in this little island we have this incredible diversity. I mean, here you've got just a few teas, but around you, this every week, 10,000 plus different teas, which means a tea for moods, for occasions, and so on. Now, here's a candy. So we've got, you've got a little bit, you can see the differences there. So this is our candy tea. Anybody who comes across to candy maybe next month, I'm sure there'll be many people coming across for the Perahera. I think it happens in August, doesn't it?
Yes, yes.
Beautiful teas, still bright, still light, not with the intensity of the lower and some of the Ratnapura teas, but extraordinary in the variety. But again now, Ken, lots of people used to tell us, look, we want consistency in tea. Now, I always go back to them and say, look, tea is a natural beverage. There's nothing consistent and there's nothing homogenized about nature, because every day should be different, like the weather. How did you deal with that in terms of your product and maybe educating your customer?
Okay. Again, weather. Weather plays that kind of, has that kind of effect on tea, in the sense that if you have rain, you're going to have to take out all that moisture. It's going to mix with the chemicals that are in the leaf, and it's going to be maybe the tea that you don't want to have.
Yes.
Right? But what we found when I was planting is that if your leaf standard is good, your variation of quality is not that great. You can still have that same tea that you have been producing hitherto coming out today, as opposed to what is happening now. You suddenly find a tea that's coming out with excellent quality, and I'm using the word excellent quality, and then down 3 months later, you're looking at an absolute rubbishy tea.
Yeah.
So, does that answer your question?
It does, and I think this is the key thing. People talk about how much the world values purity in terms of nature and provenance and the heritage, but yet want a perfectly homogenized product that tastes the same every day, which is something that is very hard. Of course, there's an art here.
Well,
that
you have the art.
So I mean, it's about picking different places. Well,
Yeah.
so when you had the monsoons in whichever estate, what was your strategy? Did you adjust the withering, or how were you compensating for the weather?
There again, Dilhan, you go back to the raw material. If you don't look after the tea bush during the monsoon, you're going to get a disease called a fungus on the leaf,
Nice.
and it just flakes. So you have to go back to agricultural practices to ensure that your leaf is coming, your raw material is good. When you have weather that's not conducive to good tea, you change your style of manufacture in the factory and withering. That's all you do.
Yeah.
So you might not get what you hope for, but you'll get a very close product to it. But you have to change. You can't just sit there and say, okay, fine, 365 days, you just do this, and I'm quite happy. You change. No, you buy teas, and then you look for something for your blend. So the same that we produce a tea and hope, and we try to keep that name.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to, stumble and fall on the way. We just try to keep that same standard, that same style.
I think what is wonderful about what you're sharing with us is the fact that in this world of standardization, of commoditization, tea making is still an art.
It is an art.
It is, and even tasting tea, the joy of something my son has taken to in his own TikToking and trying to present it to a new generation. And it's incredible the number of people, when you talk about the different types of teas, explaining that there's a tea to go with your grilled fish, there's a tea for your vodka, there's a tea for your panna cotta dessert. The number of people who understand that relating this to the influence of nature and relating it to the art of picking, of tea making, of tea tasting, it's a luxury that is really beyond what convention dictates. I mean, okay, this is not driving a Mercedes, but it is experiencing nature, experiencing the art. Typically, I guess one of these glasses would have the equivalent of 30 hand-picked leaves and buds, which incredible luxury, isn't it?
Like you said, the difference between a Mercedes and a Maruti.
Yes.
I mean, you have good raw material, you're going to get yourself a Merc.
Absolutely.
You have bad raw material and everything bad in the factory, you're going to get yourself a Maruti.
Absolutely.
It's simple as that. I mean, you have to. Management, administration, supervision is a must.
Absolutely. Commitment.
Commitment
passion.
is 100%. Not from top to bottom or bottom from top, together.
Absolutely. And I had a few questions before, which I have to answer before we move to our Q&A. So I had a question from several of the members of our tea club. Can you produce a flavored tea that a tea grower, a tea maker would enjoy? So I know you told me not to ask you about these, so I won't, but I want to explain the process. So here we have a strawberry, a peach, and a raspberry. Sounds frivolous, or is it? Now, the essence of gastronomy is the harmony of flavor and texture on the palate. So what we did when we added raspberry was to use a tea from the Udapusalawa region that has brightness, some intensity, and balances the sweetness, the woody notes in the raspberry. Now, you wouldn't use that same tea for an Earl Grey because Earl Grey has that citrusy sweetness and the intensity. So we use a tea that is closer to the Ratnapura region, more intensity, more strength, because again, it's about balance. So when you produce a flavored tea, for us, I mean, looking at this strawberry, now this is a tea that people love. It's light, it's floral, it's fruity. Similar but different to the raspberry. You need to use a lighter tea for that, a softer tea, because it's got to partner with the ingredient, with the, in this case, the natural strawberry, which we have in agglomerate, the white particles in there, as well as in a liquid that is infused into the leaf over 24 hours. So, short answer to whoever asked that question, yes, you can. There is a flavored tea that a tea maker, a tea grower would love, and the principle of that, good ingredients, respect your ingredients, great strawberry, extracted naturally and with a profile that beautifully lends, not when I say extracted naturally, not everything that is natural is good, because when you have a natural ingredient in a product like tea, which has typically a shelf life of say 2 years, invariably, you know what happens to a strawberry if you keep it for 2 years, right? It's not going to be very tasty. So you need to make sure that it's stabilized. So, in this case, you have a starch matrix, so it's an agglomerate. But you need to make sure that you've got the right ingredients and you achieve that balance of flavor. So the rest of our teas, you have our mid-groans. We've got a beautiful Dumagastalawa tea here, and that's a tea from our tea maker's private reserve. Malty, very different, would be fantastic in a nice tea cocktail. And then you go further down. You're going down to the Sabaragama district. You've got Rilhene estate over here. Now Rilhene has this one is a beauty. I think this just won an award. Very earthy. It goes beyond malty. And that's the beauty of tea. And I think, a lot of the things that Ken has shared with us, it's about nature, it's about the interrelationship, about the art of tea making and nature. And I think that's the beauty about tea, because here we talked about a journey in tea. But the beautiful thing is that the journey changes every day with the weather, The journey changes with the region that we are traveling into. You've got the light, bright Nuarelias, and the same plant is giving you intensity and strength when you're coming down to Ratnapura, and it's giving you earthiness when you're, it's you know, you have notes of bitter chocolate in some of the really intense teas that you get from the Galle district, from low elevation, sandy soils, completely different structure. So,
may I say something?
of course,
here?
please do.
The blending of teas like strawberry, mango, and all was done by, in my opinion, from one of the finest estates in the Uber in the 1960s. And he also had Earl Grey tea selling. Of course, it was introduced as an Earl Grey, and he also had mango flavored teas. And the most important, this gentleman tried any new machinery and any new thinking to see or ensure that the world of tea can progress further and better. Unfortunately, he's no more in the living. But there was this guy who was willing to do that. So blending of teas then and now taken up by Dilmah, brilliantly taken up by Dilmah, have done well. And there is a place in the world for it.
And I think probably, one of the reasons why tea is undervalued, you have global financial crisis in 2008. Buyers were of the opinion that people wanted to save money on tea. Look at this beverage. The difference between a really excellent tea and an average one is a few cents. So tea is not a herb or not a drink that you should compromise on. It's got natural goodness, it's got incredible variety, it's got adventure in taste beyond anything that any herb can offer. The influence of nature, the art of the tea maker. And so I think for us, the whole purpose of our School of Tea and these conversations is about telling people the story of tea, because too few people know it. It's something that you simply add sugar or milk to in most cases. But it's a lot more than that, isn't it?
Why is Dilmah so important in Sri Lanka, apart from New Zealand and Australia and India and places like? Sincerity and quality. Now, how many estates, you can tell me, how many estates today really go and look into what they are making? Yeah. Is it when we were young superintendents, we were the CEOs of the estates.
Yes.
We were responsible to the agency house that employed us. We were given an estimate, we were given a program to work, and we worked on that. We were very well looked after, well paid, and there was no nonsense. You did well, they looked after you. You did not do well, you were told, go fly a kite. Look at what comes out today.
Yes.
I mean, who is responsible today in checking the companies and the estates that fall below the bar, deliberately fall below the bar?
I think also, Ken, I think you're absolutely right. But globally, if you look at it, back in the day, I was reading something that actually wonderful Dr. Rohan Petyagoda shared with me about tea in Australia in the early 1900s. And they're talking about Petyagallas, they're talking about single estate teas on shelf in Australia. Today, you wouldn't have a hope in hell of finding a single estate tea on a supermarket shelf in Australia today. So I think the demand has also changed, and I think our battle is constantly, yes, we fight for quality and we cannot compromise. We will not compromise, because my father's reputation, his promise is in each of these teas. But also my concern for the industry going forward is that there is this constant refrain, cheaper, match this price. So for us as tea growers, we need to fly the flag. We need to tell them, look, this is what real tea is all about. And with that, I think we have Generation Z and the millennial generation on our side because they're looking for quality. They're looking for wellness. I mean, look at this. This stuff reduces stress by 51%. It reduces
Quite excellent.
absolutely
Excellent.
heart disease, and reduces every possible chronic ailment.
Memory-wise,
There you
coffee
go.
gives you that instant oomph, but drops down.
That's
Tea
it.
takes a longer
L-theanine.
time to stay.
The L-theanine in tea is unique in terms of its combination with that nominal amount of caffeine. So yeah, it's priceless. But we are tea people. We love tea, so we would think so. Now the guys are saying time is up. Are there any questions? We rarely have a person of your caliber here. So one question is, what is your most memorable planting moment? And don't say anything embarrassing because we have a child rating on this.
Very, very, very difficult. Very difficult question to answer because there are quite a few. But one of the most lasting memories. Is it possible to mention the estate or the?
Yes, of course, please do.
One of the most lasting memories I had was when I was in Diagama West Estate, and I had a superintendent by the name of John and Valerie Barlow. Lovely people. I learned a lot of work, and really, really, I spent 9 wonderful years on that place. We were surrounded by the workforce and they were pelting stones at us.
Wow.
And John Barlow had polio in both legs, so he found it very difficult to walk. I was maybe 27 years old, extremely fit, still playing rugby. So he told me, son, my life, I've got my family, my children all right, my life could be over. Yours is just starting. Go for it. Just run. I'll hold them back. Of course, I stayed back, not because I was courageous. My legs wouldn't work. I was shivering so much, and I stayed back. And we sorted the matter out, and that has remained in my memory. For here's a man who said, my life might be over.
Yes.
Yours is just beginning. Go.
That's incredibly courageous. And there were so many wonderful people who formed the fabric of our industry, isn't it?
Oh, I had a wonderful tea life, 60 years of fantastic life. The end became, I wouldn't say sour, but it became sort of like, I worked for an excellent company in the end, but it was like a meaningless relationship because the superintendent was merely like a post box to receive instructions from head office and then pass it on to his juniors and to ensure that it's done. I don't think that way the tea industry will survive. I think the man on the spot must be the CEO.
And must know what they're doing. And
For sure.
so anyone who wants to learn more about planting, check out Wisdom in the Leaf, a collection of tea-inspired knowledge from amazing, amazing people like Vijay, John Pillai we talked about, and so many others.
And just one more. Here's a book published by the Tea Research Institute in 1995. I don't know if it's still in publication or what, but I think every tea man, every assistant and superintendent should get one because this gives you to the A to Z on how to manage your estate. And it's simple, it's small, little book.
Thank you, Ken. You're a legend.
Thank you very much.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure is entirely mine. Thank you so much.